A Memphis mother testified in front of her daughter's accused killer in court today. Brandon Isabelle is on trial for the murder of Danielle Hoyle and throwing their newborn into the Mississippi River. Isabelle faces several charges, including first-degree murder, kidnapping, and aggravated child abuse. Hoyle's mother, April Campbell, testified that her daughter was excited about having her second child, Kennedy. Campbell said the whole family shared that excitement, even though she didn't approve of Isabelle because he was married. The last time Campbell says she saw her daughter and granddaughter was February 1st, 2022, when Danielle told her she was meeting Isabelle to take Kennedy back to the hospital.
A couple of hours later, a police was pulling in a yard. I thought it was Danielle. So me and my boys were getting up to go help her get the baby out the car. But it was the police, and they were asking me who drove a Chevy Cruze.
Memphis, Tennessee, February 1st, 2022. Officer Cody Sutton is on routine patrol in the Whitehaven neighborhood when something stops him. A tan Chevrolet Cruze parked on the wrong side of the road. Driver's side window shattered. He runs the plates. The car belongs to a woman named Danielle Hoyle. Officers contact the family. The family says Danielle left the house hours ago. She had her 2-day-old baby girl with her. They check the car. No baby. They check the road. No baby. They search the surrounding area. Nothing. A 2-day-old infant. Gone. And that is where this case begins. Before we go any further, you need to know exactly how we got here, and it is worse than you think. Welcome to the Crime Edition. Today, we're revealing the full story and the latest updates in the case of Danielle Hoyle and baby Kennedy Hoyle, a case out of Memphis, Tennessee that shook an entire community, ran through years of legal proceedings, and ended with a 147-year sentence and a baby that has never been found. Stay with us. If you're new here, subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and drop in the comments, where are you watching from? To understand what happened on February 1st, 2022, you first have to understand who Danielle Hoyle was, because she was not just a name in a police report. Danielle Letitia Hoyle was born in 1995 in Memphis, Tennessee. She grew up in Whitehaven, a neighborhood on the southwest side of the city, and by 2022, she was 27 years old, 2 months away from her 28th birthday. Her favorite color was red. When Danielle passed, FedEx released a public statement. They called her loss shocking and deeply saddening. They described her as a valued team member, and in the same statement, they confirmed that the man connected to her case was immediately terminated from the company. That detail matters because that man had been working right alongside her. There is something else worth knowing about where Danielle stood in her personal life heading into 2022. She had ended a relationship earlier in her pregnancy. By late 2021, people close to her said she had moved on and was seeing someone else. At least one person in her life believed the man she had ended things with was not handling that well. That detail would become relevant very quickly. Her best friend, Deisha Hill, would later stand outside Danielle's funeral and say just 5 words. "I had just talked to her." Danielle left behind Jariah, 9 years old, close to her mother and unaware of what that night was about to take from her. Brandon Isabelle was born on February 1, 1997 in Cordova, Tennessee. That birth date is not a small detail. The events of this case unfolded on his 25th birthday. On the surface, Brandon Isabelle looked like someone who had built a solid life. He worked at the same FedEx facility in Memphis where Danielle worked. In 2020, he was named FedEx Employee of the Year at that facility. He also received the Purple Passion Award, a recognition for excellence. His performance reviews described him as disciplined and reliable. He had no prior criminal record. Aside from traffic violations, he had never been convicted of anything. He was also married to a woman named Zaria Isabelle. Together they had a 5-year-old son named Kingston. By the time Brandon met Danielle in early 2021, the marriage was effectively over. They were living separately, but the divorce paperwork had never been filed. Brandon and Danielle began a relationship at work. It did not last long before Danielle became pregnant, but by the time the pregnancy was confirmed, Brandon had already begun pursuing another woman, Artisha Stewart, also a FedEx employee, 23 years old, a single mother with a 4-year-old daughter named Aaliyah. Brandon told Artisha he was separated from his wife. He did not tell her about Danielle's pregnancy, not immediately. When Danielle was approximately 5 months pregnant and told Brandon she intended to carry the baby to term regardless of his involvement, Brandon sent her a text message. That message was later recovered and presented at trial. It read, "I can't be a father to that kid. Let's end our mistake, Danielle." Danielle refused. By December 2021, Brandon had given Artisha a promise ring and was sending letters to her family members telling them he was fully committed to her. In those same letters, he stated that Artisha had made it clear she did not want him purchasing anything for Danielle or the baby if he was serious about the relationship. On January 27, 2022, 5 days before Kennedy was born, Brandon filed for divorce from Zaria. He was doing everything he could to show Artisha he had chosen her. One more detail that prosecutors would later flag at trial. Brandon Isabelle carried a Glock 19 pistol in a holster inside his waistband. Every day. By January 2022, the situation had become a pressure point. Artisha Stewart testified at trial that her relationship with Brandon had been on and off for roughly 6 months. She had been seeing other people during their breakups. Brandon was aware of it, and according to her testimony, the relationship was rocky heading into the final days of January. Digital forensics extracted from Brandon's phone during the investigation revealed something that investigators found significant. Brandon had saved Artisha's contact information under multiple different names, including Wifey, Tiffany Purcell, and Pudding. The extraction also showed that a call had been deleted from his logs. On January 30, 2022, Danielle went into labor. Due to COVID-19 hospital protocols at the time, only one visitor was allowed in the delivery room. Danielle chose Brandon. While he sat in that hospital, while Danielle was in labor, Brandon was texting Artisha. According to Artisha's testimony, she told him she was essentially done with the relationship. She did not want to deal with another child and another situation. Brandon pleaded with her to give him another chance. Artisha did not wait. She purchased a paternity test at a nearby Walgreens and brought it to Brandon at the hospital herself. She also went inside and spoke directly with Danielle. Artisha testified that she did not want Brandon to sign Kennedy's birth certificate. In the early hours of January 31, 2022, Kennedy Hoyle was born. 6 pounds, 17 inches long, brown hair, brown eyes. But there is something that happened the day before that the prosecution placed significant weight on at trial. On January 30, 2022, the same day Danielle went into labor, phone records showed that Brandon Isabelle performed a Google search. He searched whether bullets can be traced back to the specific gun that fired them. He then clicked through to a link that asked the question directly, can all bullets be traced back to the exact gun that fired them? He deleted the search history. Investigators recovered it. Brandon had also previously arranged to meet Artisha and her mother on February 1, the day after Kennedy was born, to formally tell them that his relationship with Danielle was finished. He wanted to draw a clear line. February 1, 2022 was also Artisha Stewart's birthday. She had plans to celebrate that evening. Kennedy Hoyle came home from the hospital in the afternoon of February 1, 2022. At approximately 4:30 in the afternoon, Danielle and Kennedy arrived at the family home on Windrest Drive. April Campbell was there. Jeriah was there. Extended family had gathered. For about an hour, Kennedy passed from arm to arm. April fed her. April changed her clothes. Danielle's son Cornelius strapped Kennedy into her car seat before they left that evening. Kennedy was wearing a black and white polka dot onesie, pink pants, and a small hat that had been a gift from a FedEx co-worker. At around 6 p.m., Danielle told her mother she needed to take Kennedy back to the hospital for routine follow-up testing. April did not question it. Similar things had happened with her other children before. She believed her daughter. What April did not know was that Brandon had reached out to Danielle. He told her he had baby clothes for Kennedy and asked her to come meet him. Danielle left. At 8:32 p.m., surveillance footage from a MAPCO gas station on East Brooks Road captured Danielle and Brandon together. Kennedy was in the vehicle. TBI digital forensics agent Michael Garner later confirmed through GPS extraction that Brandon's phone was at that location until 8:51 p.m. From there, Brandon's phone tracked to the intersection of East Levi Road and Sedgwick Street, an isolated dead-end road in Whitehaven. There was no reason for anyone to be there at that hour. GPS data confirmed Brandon's device remained at that location from approximately 9:02 p.m. to 9:17 p.m., roughly 15 minutes. At 9:22 p.m., a cluster of text messages from Artesia were opened on Brandon's phone. 1 second later, at 9:23 p.m., his GPS shows him leaving that location. According to the prosecution's account, presented in opening statements and confirmed through the evidence at trial, Brandon approached Danielle's car, opened the passenger side door, and fired 5 shots, striking her in the face and the head. He then took Kennedy, still in her car seat, placed her in his vehicle, and drove away. By 10:24 p.m., Brandon's phone placed him at his parents' home in Cordova. He went inside and changed his clothes. He left items in a closet there, including his Adidas slides and a windbreaker. Deputy Eric Carlisle would later retrieve those items. Forensic testing confirmed the presence of Danielle Hoyle's blood on both. Brandon's vehicle, a white Chevrolet Malibu, was also tracked by real-time crime center surveillance footage crossing the A.W. Willis Bridge toward the north end of Mud Island on multiple occasions around this time. At 11:15 p.m., Officer Cody Sutton spotted the tan Chevrolet Cruze, Danielle's car, on the wrong side of the road on East Levi Road, driver's window shattered. He ran the plates. While officers were still making contact with Danielle's family by phone, her body was found in a ditch beside the vehicle. Kennedy was not there. At 11:20 p.m., Brandon's phone pinged at the Upper Mud Island boat ramp where the Wolf River meets the Mississippi River. He left at 11:27 p.m. At 11:39 p.m., Brandon sent a text message to Danielle's phone. It read, "Show me Kennedy. I'm going to take her tomorrow." She would never respond. At 11:59 p.m., Brandon walked into a Walgreens on Elvis Presley Boulevard. He purchased a rose, a Valentine's Day card, candy, and a 6-pack of Sprite, gifts for Artesia. He sat in the parking lot and wrote in the card. According to Lieutenant Charles Winbush, who read the card aloud at trial, the note described Brandon's intention to build a life with Artesia, raising Kennedy, his son Kingston, and Artesia's daughter together as a blended family. The Walgreens receipt, dated February 1, 2022, was entered into evidence at trial. At 12:13 a.m. on February 2nd, Brandon drove to a Walmart on Elvis Presley Boulevard. Surveillance footage presented at trial showed a white 4-door sedan pulling to the back of the building and stopping near the dumpsters. Kennedy's car seat was left there. It was later found when a civilian named Ralph Carter directed Officer Ronald Blake to a baby carrier on the west side of the building. Officer Blake's body camera footage was shown to the jury. Then, Brandon drove to Artesia's home. When she came out, he jumped into her car and told her they needed to leave immediately. He told her that Danielle's family was looking for him. They drove together to his parents' home in Cordova. Officers would later find Brandon's white Malibu parked at Artisha's residence. Inside the car, his Adidas slides and white socks. Both tested positive for Danielle Hoyle's blood. At 10:07 a.m. on February 2, 2022, Memphis police detained Brandon Isabelle and Artisha Stewart. They were taken separately to 201 Poplar Avenue, MPD Homicide Division. But something had already happened before that. Earlier that morning, at Brandon's parents' home in Cordova, Artisha had arrived carrying a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson pistol and a lime green bat. She told investigators she came armed because she and Brandon had been receiving threatening messages referencing someone named Cortez. Brandon's mother called police. Officer Crosby responded. Crosby testified at trial that something felt off about the way Brandon explained the situation. When Crosby asked for Danielle's name to run her information, Brandon gave him an incorrect spelling. Investigators were unable to pull anything up. Crosby went back to his patrol car to try again. Before he could, a man with tears in his eyes approached the vehicle. A group of people followed behind him. Crosby testified it was Danielle's father. At 8:45 a.m., the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation issued a statewide Amber Alert for Kennedy Hoyle, 2 days old, black and white polka dot onesie, pink pants. What followed was one of the largest searches in recent Memphis history. Memphis Police, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, the Shelby County Sheriff's Office, a dive team from Brighton, Tennessee, Tennessee Wildlife Resources officers, helicopters, drones, cadaver dogs, and ground teams, all deployed along the Mississippi River in freezing rain. Sergeant Justin Smith coordinated on-site search efforts at Mud Island. The search ran from February 2 through February 7, 2022. The only physical trace of Kennedy ever recovered was a small baby hat. Officer Dennis Williams found it approximately 10 feet from the mouth of the Mississippi River. Investigators were also given additional clothing items belonging to Kennedy to assist the cadaver dogs. Kennedy's body was never found. On social media, confusion spread quickly. Zaria Isabelle, Brandon's estranged wife, posted publicly to clarify she had no involvement. She stated she had been home with Kingston, who had undergone surgery on February 1. She noted that people were confusing her with Artisha. A man Danielle had posted about on social media in June 2021 who went by the name Cartel Nino was immediately ruled out. He was incarcerated at the time. The Hoyle family's GoFundMe campaign was launched in the days following the case going public. It nearly doubled its original goal within a matter of days. While the search for Kennedy continued, investigators were building an evidence case that prosecutors would later describe as airtight. TBI Special Agent Michael Garner, a digital forensics expert, extracted data from 3 phones, Brandon Isabelle's, Artisha Stewart's, and Danielle Hoyle's. What he found mapped out Brandon's entire night in precise detail, every location, every movement, every timestamp. Prosecutor Drew Carpenter would later stand in front of the jury and refer to Brandon's phone as a silent witness. Garner recovered deleted web history from Brandon's device, including the search about whether bullets could be traced back to a specific gun and the link he clicked through to. Deleted, but not gone. Garner also identified a FaceTime call placed to Danielle Hoyle's phone at 10:02 p.m. on February 1 from a location consistent with Brandon having already left the scene on East Levi Road. Danielle did not answer. She never would. GPS data confirmed that Artisha Stewart's phone was never at East Levi Road or at Mud Island on the night of the murders. The forensic record cleared her of any direct involvement. On the physical side, Deputy Eric Carlisle collected Brandon's Adidas slides and windbreaker from his parents' home. Possible gunshot residue was detected on Brandon's pants using a forensic light source. TBI agent Stephen Walchak from the Jackson Crime Lab confirmed the blood on the slides matched Danielle Hoyle's DNA. Sergeant Jeremy Klein retrieved Danielle's Apple Watch from April Campbell's home. On the watch was a screenshot of a text exchange, a message from a contact saved as Brandon, telling Danielle he needed to be a father to his own child and asking her to end the pregnancy. The defense challenged the screenshot at trial, noting it carried no visible timestamp. The prosecution argued the content and context made the message's origin clear. Dr. Scott Collier, the forensic pathologist who performed Danielle's autopsy, testified that she sustained 5 gunshot wounds to the head and neck. She had no defensive wounds, meaning she did not see it coming. An abrasion on her hip was consistent with her body being moved after she was struck. The manner of death was ruled homicide. The murder weapon, identified by Brandon during interrogation as a Glock 9mm, was never recovered. Brandon told investigators he threw it into the Wolf River Delta. Brandon Isabelle pleaded not guilty to all charges. He maintained that position for over 3 years. Jury selection began on September 22, 2025. Opening statements were delivered on September 23 at the Shelby County Criminal Justice Center. The jury consisted of 10 women and 4 men. The state anticipated calling approximately 30 witnesses. The trial would last 7 days. Charges: 2 counts of first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse and neglect, and especially aggravated kidnapping. Lead prosecutor, Drew Carpenter. Defense attorney, William Massey. On day 1, Officer Cody Sutton took the stand as the first witness, describing the abandoned vehicle and what was found beside it. The final witness of day 1 was Sergeant Jeremy Klein, who presented the Apple Watch evidence, the text asking Danielle to end the pregnancy. The defense immediately challenged it, pointing out there was no visible timestamp. The prosecution argued the content and context made the message's origin clear. On day 2, April Campbell testified. She walked the jury through the family's 1 hour with Kennedy, feeding her, holding her, strapping her into the car seat. She described the moment Danielle told her she was taking Kennedy back to the hospital and how she believed it. She described waiting for a call that never came. She described police pulling into the driveway and realizing it was not Danielle returning home. Also on day 2, Artesia Stewart testified. She described the on and off relationship, the paternity test, the texts during the delivery, and what the state of their relationship looked like heading into February 1st. Sergeant Jacoba Boyd later read one of Brandon's text messages to Artesia aloud in open court, sent while Danielle was in labor. "I'm sorry, Artesia. I'm sorry I let you down. If I could take it back, I would. I truly love you and want to be with you for the rest of my life." Dr. Scott Collier testified that same day. 5 gunshot wounds, no defensive wounds. Manner of death: homicide. On day 4, first responders and dive team members described the river search in freezing rain. Lieutenant Charles Winbush then took the stand and played the recorded interrogation video for the jury. The courtroom watched Brandon's story shift from saying he dropped off baby clothes at the MAPCO and left, to admitting he met Danielle at a secluded location, to eventually stating, "I shot her." Winbush testified that Danielle's cause of death had never been mentioned to Brandon before he said those words. Brandon volunteered it. Body camera footage was also shown, investigators taking Brandon to the Mud Island location, asking him directly about the baby. Brandon denied putting her in the water. He covered his face. He shook his head. On days 4 and 5, TBI agent Michael Garner presented his full digital forensics findings: GPS mapping, deleted search history, text communications, and phone location data. Surveillance footage from the MAPCO and the Walmart was shown to the jury. The Walgreens store manager confirmed the items and the receipt. The timestamps on the surveillance footage matched the phone GPS data exactly. On day 6, Sergeant Jacoba Boyd took the stand and walked through the full interrogation in detail. The defense raised the question of whether Boyd had implied Brandon would be harmed in custody during questioning, a potential coercion claim. Boyd denied threatening him and confirmed he was legally permitted to use deception during interrogation if it meant finding the baby. GPS records confirmed that Artesh's phone was never near either crime scene. TBI agent Stephen Walchak testified from the Jackson Crime Lab. The state rested its case. The defense called one witness, Professor Jeffrey Neuschatz of the University of Alabama, an expert in interrogation psychology. He argued that a 10-hour interrogation raised questions about the voluntariness of Brandon's confession. The prosecution countered with a straightforward point. Brandon disclosed how Danielle had been shot before any investigator had told him. On day 7, Brandon Isabelle declined to take the stand. The defense filed a motion to have the first-degree murder charges reduced to second-degree murder. Judge Carlyn Addison denied it. Closing arguments followed. Prosecutor Drew Carpenter called the phone a silent witness one final time. She closed with this: Danielle Hoyle's mistake was getting involved with that man. Defense attorney William Massey argued that the prosecution had not proven premeditation and asked the jury to consider Brandon's mental and emotional state. The jury deliberated. They returned a verdict in under 2 hours: guilty on all counts. The penalty phase began immediately after the verdict on October 1, 2025. April Campbell returned to the stand. She told the jury, "Kennedy was our world. All we got is pictures and memories, and that's not right." The prosecution read a victim impact letter written by Danielle's sister into the court record. It said, "The happiest day of my life turned into the worst day of my life. Brandon, if you didn't want her, you should have stayed away. She was going to be loved regardless." The defense called Madison Irwin an employee with Inquisitor Incorporated, who testified to Brandon's FedEx achievements and the courses he had completed while in jail, basic electrician and plumbing training throughout 2024. The defense argued that Brandon had no prior criminal convictions and had used his time in custody to improve himself. They asked the jury not to impose life without the possibility of parole. The jury deliberated for nearly 3 hours on the penalty phase alone. Their decision? Life in prison with the possibility of parole after a minimum of 51 years. For each count of murder. Brandon Isabelle then took the stand and addressed April Campbell and Danielle's family directly. He offered a formal apology. On November 20, 2025, Judge Carlyn Addison returned for the final sentencing on the remaining charges. She sentenced Brandon to 51 years for the murder of Danielle and 51 years for the murder of Kennedy Hoyle, both to run consecutively. That was 102 years. She then added 22.5 years for aggravated child abuse and 22.5 years for especially aggravated kidnapping, also consecutive. That was 45 additional years. Total sentence, 147 years. Judge Addison addressed the court directly before stepping down. She said, "The fact of the matter is this. This world is darker because Danielle and Kennedy Hoyle are not here. There are no words that I can use that can make sense of what happened. There are no words I can use to bring your loved ones back." The 45 additional years, she noted, were not arbitrary. They represented 1 year for every hour that Kennedy Hoyle was alive on this earth. Shelby County District Attorney Steve Mulroy issued a statement following the sentencing, saying the outcome ensured that Danielle and Kennedy's lives mattered, and acknowledged every family member who sat through every day of testimony to see it through. If this case moved you, subscribe to the Crime Edition. We cover cases like this one with accuracy, depth, and the respect these victims deserve. Hit subscribe. It takes 2 seconds. Kennedy Hoyle's body has never been recovered. The Memphis Police Department has stated that the search for her remains is officially ongoing and will continue until she is found. On February 17, 2022, the Hoyle family held a visitation at N.J. Ford & Sons Funeral Home on South Parkway West in Memphis. On February 19, 2022, Danielle's funeral service was held at Brown Missionary Baptist Church. She was laid to rest at Memorial Park Cemetery. Her casket was red, her favorite color. April Campbell had a small bear made with a bean heart placed inside the casket with Danielle, so that her daughter would not be buried without something representing Kennedy beside her. Judge Hoyle was 9 years old the night she lost both her mother and her newborn sister. She is now 13. She lives with her grandmother, April Campbell, in the same Whitehaven home where the family once gathered to hold Kennedy for the very first time. Brandon Isabelle is currently serving 147 years in a Tennessee correctional facility. Under the terms of his sentence, he would not be eligible for any parole consideration for decades. This case began with a routine patrol officer and a broken car window on a quiet street in Whitehaven. It ended with the longest sentence a Memphis court has handed down in recent memory and a family that is still waiting to bring Kennedy home. A 2-day-old baby girl, her mother, both gone within hours of leaving a house full of people who loved them. Here is what we want to ask you before you go. Do you think 147 years was the right outcome for Brandon Isabelle? Or do you feel the sentence should have been different? Drop your answer in the comments. We read every single one. If you are new to this channel, subscribe right now. The Crime Edition exists because cases like this one deserve more than a headline. They deserve the full truth, told accurately and told with respect for everyone these crimes affected. We will see you in the next one.